It's morning time. Good morning, everyone. Grant Cohn, Jack Hammer. Thanks for joining us. This is kind of like an impromptu show. I sent out a DM like an hour and a half ago to like 5 people saying you want to do a roundtable. Jack hit me back. Everyone else was at work, so it's not a roundtable. I tried to come up with a name for the show. Jack has a great show with Jesse Naylor called Hammer and Nails. So I was like trying to live up to that, and I couldn't. I mean, there's Arm and Hammer, which people know about. So this is Cohn and Hammer. It's not the best name, but we're going to go with it today. Cohn and Hammer. Talking about the 49ers. I'm excited. How are you, Jack?
I'm good. How you doing? That's a great name right there.
I'm all right. It makes me feel good that we have a name. So let's talk about Trey Lance for a little bit. The way I'm thinking, I don't really want to talk about Trey Lance directly. I want to talk about the quarterbacks and what's ahead. I'm excited that OTAs are coming. Rookie minicamp is in a week. It's for 3 days, and they didn't have this stuff last year, and we're going to be able to watch it and report about it, and I'm really excited. So let's talk about that in particular. There are 5 quarterbacks on this roster. I'm going to name them: Jimmy Garoppolo, Josh Rosen, Trey Lance, Nate Sudfeld, Josh Johnson. I've never seen the Niners go into a camp with 5 quarterbacks. There's not enough reps. They usually have 4. So who do you think is the odd man out when training camp starts in late July?
I think it's going to be between Rosen and Johnson, and I'd probably lean more towards Johnson. And the reason I said is they gave Sudfeld a pretty good guarantee in his contract when they brought him over, so I'm pretty certain he's going to be there. So it's going to be between those 2 guys. Johnson's one of those guys. I think he just kind of was there at the end of the season last year, really just to fill that spot because they needed a quarterback.
Yeah, like my question is like, why are they wasting Josh Johnson's time? Like, well, how did he end up here, and why is he still here? He's been here longer than Rosen. I mean, he might really know the offense by now. I mean, what is he doing here?
Yeah, he may. He definitely has been around the league quite a bit. So, as a veteran guy, who knows? Maybe he's showing more than Josh Rosen when he actually gets to play. I know we're all basing it off of what we've seen on film and and other stops, but we don't really know what he's doing in practice on a regular basis.
I mean, theoretically, if Trey Lance is the future of the offense, as of course he is, and the Niners are going to maybe take the offense a new direction with him at quarterback, maybe Josh Johnson is a helpful backup to have. I have no idea. It's possible that Josh Rosen could be the odd man out here. It just doesn't seem like what's in it for him to stick around. Now, what's in it for him is a job in the NFL, I guess. It's not like he can really be picky and choosy at this point. No one really wants him. So I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think there's a whole lot of people knocking on the door for Josh Rosen to come and join them. At least Johnson's been around the league for a while, and he kind of knows the pro game, and he can maybe mentor from that standpoint a rookie quarterback.
So Josh Rosen, writing might be on the wall. The offense may be evolving away from your skill set. Hard to say. I'm really interested to see how that plays out, and I don't understand why. I just can't understand why they gave $250,000 to Nate Sudfeld. I don't think I ever will. But I've never seen him play in person, so we'll see.
Yeah, maybe that's the the quarterback coach getting in there because he worked with him in Philadelphia. Kind of like what he did with he brought in Nick Mullins, so it could be that kind of thing.
Yeah, and a lot of time the backup guy is there more for what he can do in like meetings and for the scout team in preparation than for what he could do on the field. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're saying maybe one of these guys is going to get cut before camp starts or before training camp. But let's talk about how the Niners are going to divvy up reps like early on. OTAs are going to start in a couple of weeks. If Jimmy's there, Trey Lance is there, Josh Rosen's there, Josh Johnson's there, Nate Sudfeld's there. How do you think the reps are going to be divvied up? How would you divvy them up if you were the head coach? Kind of the same.
I think you really want to try to get Garoppolo and Lance the same number of reps because those are really the 2 guys you're expecting to, at least early on, those are the guys you're expecting to be your starters, right? So you want to get them as much reps as you can, and I try to keep them equal. Let's say 50% of the reps go between those 2 guys, and then the other 50 get split amongst the other 3, or maybe 75-25, something along those lines.
Yeah. I think it's going to evolve. I think it's going to be interesting. The first practice, the first practice are going to have a rookie minicamp. So Lance will get all the reps. Then they'll have OTAs. And I would expect in the first OTA that it's not going to be a quarterback competition right away. At least that's what Kyle has said. I mean, his words are that it's not a competition yet. Lance isn't ready, and if it becomes that, it becomes that naturally. So I would think on the
Mhm.
first day, Jimmy's going to get the first team reps. And then the way they used to do it was Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard would split the second team reps. I think it's possible that Trey Lance will be splitting the second team reps initially. Kind of like, before you get to compete, it's like, did you ever watch the Food Network with Bobby Flay? It's always like,
Yeah.
can take on Bobby Flay, but the person has to beat someone else first. You don't get the right to just go right at Bobby Flay. That might be what it's like. They might have to, before you beat out Jimmy Garoppolo, beat out Josh Rosen. Show us that you're better than Josh Rosen, who's 24 and young and hasn't been on this team much longer than you. And if that takes a day, a week, a month, who knows? Could take a day. But I think that's what Lance is going to be worked up real slowly. I don't think he's going to be getting all the second team reps even at first. But I don't know.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I was thinking of it more as once they get to training camp, but I agree.
Yeah,
there'll be a ramp up period throughout OTAs, and that's one of the great parts about the fact that they have OTAs this year where they didn't last year. So they're going to be able to kind of ramp them up, and that's kind of why I feel so strongly about once we get to training camp and preseason and into the regular season, I think he's going to be ready to go because he's going to have a lot of reps.
Exactly. What they can say is in OTAs and minicamp, he's not competing. He's not competing. He's playing with the third team. He's playing with the rookies. We're giving him 6 plays, 6 concepts, 12 concepts. And then by training camp, they're like, wow, he just handled it so well. He's so advanced. We didn't expect him to be ready to compete, but boom, he is. They can do something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what I think will happen.
Yeah. I can't wait to see that progression. It's going to be really interesting. All right. Todd McShay recently said something interesting. Is that news that Todd McShay said something interesting? No, because Todd McShay basically predicted that the Niners would take Trey Lance. Good for him. Let's listen to McShay. He's been on this one more than some other people. So he's saying that Trey Lance will start more games than Jimmy Garoppolo in 2021. This while Jed York saying that Trey Lance could sit for 2 years. This sounds a little more realistic than what Jed York was saying. Do you buy or sell that Trey Lance will start more games than Jimmy G next season?
I'm going to buy it. I really think that Lance is going to be able to be right on par with Garoppolo and at some point take over the job. I think, we've watched Garoppolo play, and you've mentioned a number of times how he is not a very good quarterback in practice. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's going to allow.
You've also mentioned a lot of good times that he's not a very good quarterback week 1 early in the season.
He's not, because week 1 he's usually not very good. It takes him a little bit of time to ramp up. So I really think that there's a really good chance that we're going to see him. If Lance doesn't start week 1, we'll see him starting by week 3 or 4. It really depends on what that schedule when it comes out, who they're playing. Because if they got some tough teams early on, there could be some losses. It could be, early on it could be frustration and it's time to move on kind of thing.
It seems to me like the fan base will have no patience for Jimmy Garoppolo anymore. Like if they hear good things about Trey Lance in camp and they see good things from him in preseason, and Kyle Shanahan says he's not ready, we're going with Jimmy Garoppolo, fans will be frustrated with that. And then anytime Jimmy Garoppolo loses a game, throws an interception, doesn't play well, fans are going to call for Trey Lance. And as we see, the 49er fan base is basically controlling this team right now. They're in the front office. They made the picks. They vetoed Mac Jones. They might have wanted Mac Jones. The fan base said, we're not letting you do that. So the fan base has some power right now. And I think the fan base is going to be, you know how these things work. Trey Lance is the new toy. They want him out there. And if Jimmy Garoppolo's playing mediocre or worse than that, the fans aren't going to be like, hey, let's watch that again next week. They're going to be like, no, it's Trey time.
Oh yeah. We've seen this play out before. We saw it play out when Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick were here. If you remember, there was the one preseason game, I think, against the Chargers where Colin Kaepernick came out and just lit him on fire. And after that, it was like, hey, we need to get that guy in the field. We want to see that. We want to see more of that than the Alex Smith thing. And then you started to see that play out throughout the season. So I totally understand that. I think as soon as Garoppolo has trouble, you're going to hear the calls.
Doesn't it feel like deja vu? It's like 2012. Not 2011, because no one expected Kaepernick to play as a rookie. He was a second-round pick. But in 2012, it felt like as soon as Alex Smith had some shaky games, it was going to be Kaepernick time. And when he got hurt, did they both play about 8 games that year? Yeah,
they're right around 8 games. I think Smith got hurt in the 9th game. Yeah. And that's what happened, right? They had Kaepernick had a good preseason, and then Smith struggled in the loss to the New York Giants, and that's when you really
They
start
started
hearing the
splitting
calls.
time in games. Yes.
Yes, and then they lost to the Giants, and it's like, hey, we can't win with this guy. That's what you start hearing from the fans, and then then Smith had a couple of good games, got hurt, and then the rest was history.
That's right. All right, we got a few questions. Gunner says, "Do you think Banks and Sherman will be an integral part of the offense week 1? See them helping out a ton if they can get on the field. What do you think?"
Yeah, I think Banks is going to be a starter week 1. I think he'll be the starting right guard. At least he's too good in pass protection, too much of an upgrade from what they've had in the past. He's stellar in pass protection, so I would see them going with him week 1. And then Sherman, I can see him being a guy who I don't know if he's going to be carrying the ball a ton early in games, but I could see him being a guy who's getting 5 or 6 carries throughout a game, and then at the end, if it's at the end of the games when they need to run the clock out, he's the guy that would be on the field. That's kind of the role I see for him.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think there's something to the fact that the Niners see themselves in win now mode. They're a veteran team that just traded up for a 20-year-old who may not contribute right away. So with the next 2 picks, I think they got instant contributors. Aaron Banks is going to be a starter right away, as opposed to maybe a cornerback that wouldn't be as good as Emmanuel Mosley. They got an instant starter in the second round, and Trey Sermon probably won't start, but he might be the number 2 running back after Raheem Mostert. Who knows? So yeah, I think he could be getting 10 carries a game. We'll see. He'll earn it. He'll have to earn it, but he has the talent.
Yeah, I think we're going to see him get that. I think what I'm saying is I think we're going to see him get minimal carries throughout the game, here and there, and then when it gets to the fourth quarter and it's closing time, he's going to be the closer.
It's amazing to watch him late against Clemson and especially Northwestern when he's into carry number 24, 25, 26. He looks exactly the same that he looked early in the game, which is nice for a running back who doesn't run a 4.4.
Yeah, he's a guy that if he can just get past line of scrimmage, he's a tough runner.
Yeah,
and I'm breaking down a game right now from when he was at Oklahoma, so you see it there too.
Make sure you subscribe to Jack's YouTube channel. He does film breakdowns almost every day, and they're fascinating. You should be checking that out. They make you smarter. Danny Ortiz said the Hammer Zone. I like that. It's better than Cohn and Hammer. Sebastian Martinez says, I see a lot of people want Sherm back, but did no one see him get burned last year? He's 33. I'm 33. What are you trying to say? And after the draft, seems like we're going to play more man. All right, Sebastian, we can jump right ahead to that for you. All the reasons the 49ers should not re-sign Richard Sherman. And let's not miss any of them because this is becoming like a code blue situation. Unless you think they should re-sign Richard Sherman, in which case go ahead and make the case.
Yeah, no, I don't think that they should re-sign Richard Sherman. I mean, you got to with Richard Sherman, you got to appreciate everything that he did for you for the 3 years that he was here. But he's not at the. It's time to move on. It's time. There's a definite. Last year we saw the defense play better without Sherman on the field. You saw them go into the draft this year, and they brought in 2 guys who played primarily man. It kind of shows the direction that they're going. So those are just a couple of the reasons. This reminds me so much of when people started talking about Frank Gore earlier this year.
Ooh, yeah.
Remember? And these are guys who you had great relationships with, but at some point, it's just time to move on and get a fresh start. And that's kind of what I see with this.
The difference is that Richard Sherman is his own agent, and I feel like he's kind of trying to talk this into existence. Hey, we're talking. Like, are you? Or are you talking? Do you want to get? I just look. All the reasons they shouldn't re-sign Richard Sherman. Let's be frank, and I'm not trying to hit him below the belt here, but one of the best things that happened to the 49ers last year was him going to the sideline. That was a turning point in the season. Their defense was, no pass rush. And no really ability to disguise coverages, change up coverages. They just could play different versions of zone. They couldn't really blitz. They were sitting duck as a defense. He went out. Verrett came in. All of a sudden, it's the best thing that happened to the Niners defense. It's the best thing that happened to Robert Saleh's career. I'm sorry, Richard, but I don't think Robert Saleh would be a head coach right now if Richard Sherman had played 16 games last year. The fact that he played 5 and wasn't really effective when he did play, Robert Saleh could show all this growth and all these wrinkles and things that he didn't do before. And all it's like, maybe he actually can do all these things. And maybe it's Richard Sherman who's more limited at 33 years old. I just don't think that guy can play cornerback for any team. I think he's slower than me. I think if you gave me 3 weeks to train, I could beat him in a 60-yard dash. No problem, really. And that's a problem, man. If he wants to go play safety somewhere, great. But I don't think the Niners need that.
Yeah, even the safety thing, I'm not really sold on that piece either. The guys that have done that, all were guys that were relatively pretty good athletes and had really good foot speed too. I know Charles Woodson is somebody that people bring up about who was able to transition, but Woodson was also a Heisman Trophy winner and just an unbelievably, he was never. Sherman's always been on the slower side, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of why he's played the way that he is. But that was never the case with Woodson. And then even when you go back to the 49ers history with Merton Hanks made that transition as a young player after I think it was only his second or third year with the 49ers after he'd struggled outside. So I don't think that that's a really good transition for Sherman with the 49ers either.
I'm willing to bet that Richard Sherman can't crack 4.8. Like 4.80, that's the best he could do. That's my guess. Richard, if you're out there and you want to put it on TikTok or Instagram and show that you can run a 4.79, I'd love to see it because I don't think you can. And I don't think any defense needs a corner who runs a 4.8. Now, at one point, he used to be able to run a 4.5 something, but not anymore. Sorry. So.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, go back and watch the end of 2019 and the NFC Championship game and in the Super Bowl when he gets beat deep. I mean, it's not even close. If he doesn't get a hand on you, he can't cover you. Go back and watch last year against Buffalo. That was so demoralizing. Watching him try to chase that guy across the field over and over again. That looked like back when 2018, 2019. Ohio State versus Michigan, and there's one dude, they just kept running crossers, and the dude from Michigan just could not keep up, and they just killed him. We saw the same thing with Sherman.
Absolutely. Now, Ruin Roy says, Grant, I'm sorry, but you're not better than an NFL player. You're right. But here's the thing. When 10 years ago, I ran a 4.5. 10 years ago, Richard Sherman ran a 4.5, so we're even. I mean, I'm 2 months older than him. Since then, I've been sitting on the couch doing nothing, and he's been in the NFL, and he's torn his Achilles and kind of done some damage to his body. So I feel like we're still even. I feel like if you gave me 3 weeks, I could beat him. I really do. I'm going to take this seriously. From now on, you're just going to see I'm at Piedmont High. I'm stretching. I'm doing wind sprints. I'm coming for Richard Sherman's title. I want it, Richard. I want it. I'm going to put a 60-yard dash, maybe a 40, maybe both on YouTube. If they re-sign Richard Sherman, I'm definitely doing it for it. I'm definitely doing it. And not in a suit or anything like that. Like, I'm serious about it. I'm getting spikes, I'm getting a hype team. Anyway.
Well, I think you've just made me want to I want them to sign Richard Sherman now.
Come on, Richard. So many people on this team are going to hate me if I ever get back in this locker room. Him, Lynchy. God. Hey, guys. Sorry. It's me. Tony says, more depth in the DB room. That's the only reason to re-sign Sherman. Red zone packages should be a cheap deal. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, from that standpoint, cool, right? But the thing is, I don't think Richard Sherman wants to come in and be that guy. He's the Richard Sherman still sees himself as the man, and I think that's where the rub is with this whole thing.
Here's $900,000. Be our 5th cornerback and don't talk. No. And again, they say he wants to go to a contender. He wants to be in the NFL. Why don't the Jets want him? The Jets could use a tone setter, a culture setter, a guy who no. Sorry. See it, Richard.
Yeah.
It's a young man's game. Nothing against him. Like, this happened to Navarro Bowman. Fans love these players, and you get their jersey, and they're your heroes, and then they turn 32, and things happen. And I said, man, this guy can't run anymore. He's like running a 5 flat at practice. Fans didn't want to hear it. Boom, he's gone. And then it's like, well, okay, sorry. It's a young man's game. Sorry. At least Richard Sherman got to live his dream out for so long. I think it's a great story that Richard Sherman had. It's over, though.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I remember the Navarro Bowman story.
Yeah. Let someone else live their dream, Richard. Thank you very much. Okay. Reasonable? No, not yet. Hold on. All right. Let's talk about Dee Ford. No, let's not do that either. Let's talk about Trey Lance one more time. I forget who it was.
Sure.
Someone on the internet said that the Niners basically theorized, like, look, the Niners were trying to trade for Aaron Rodgers a couple of days before the draft. That was reported and confirmed. They didn't get him. They drafted Trey Lance. Are we to believe that all of a sudden the 49ers no longer want Aaron Rodgers and are just in love with Trey Lance? Most likely, they still love Aaron Rodgers. So do you think at any point the Niners would try to offer Trey Lance? Is there any scenario where that happens?
I don't really see them doing that. That would seem as much as Rodgers could keep them right at the top of the NFC. I don't really see them doing it with Lance. If they're going to do something where they're going to try to get Rodgers, I would see that's where they're going to be throwing like Garoppolo and Fred Warner and guys like that into that mix to get them. But they have Lance as their quarterback of the future, the guy they want to have here for a long time. So I don't see that necessarily playing out.
Yeah. I mean, I understand the logic of them thinking like maybe Lance wasn't necessarily – I mean, if they were willing to trade the pick for Aaron Rodgers 2 days before the draft, would they not be willing to trade Trey Lance, especially if Trey Lance was their target all along, as they say, and they were willing to give up the opportunity to take him to get Aaron Rodgers? I still feel like if the Packers called up the Niners and they're like, all right, let's talk. You got to talk. Because you love Ray, you could love Trey Lance, but you don't know that he'll ever win a Super Bowl or be great. And even though Aaron Rodgers is almost 40, I still think the Niners can win a Super Bowl this year with him. And bird in the hand, two in the bush kind of thing. So if the Packers call up and say, look, we're between a rock and a hard place and we don't really care about trading him in the NFC, we really like Trey Lance. We happen to really like Trey Lance. We gave him a really high grade, and that. But that's not going to happen, because if that's the case, they would have made the trade before the draft, right?
Well, you'd think so. It'll be interesting to see what happens here, because Green Bay isn't in a rock and a hard spot. They've got OTAs coming up here, and they have one quarterback on their roster. That's it. And so,
give him Sudfeld.
If Rodgers doesn't show up, they don't have anything. So that's going to be really interesting, because that was a report that I saw yesterday, was that they're in the market for a veteran because they only have one quarterback on the roster.
Niners got Josh Johnson, only going to take a third-round pick. What do you say, Green Bay?
Yeah.
Okay, so this probably isn't going to happen. I mean, what would have to happen for this? Basically, Green Bay would have to call and say, we want Trey Lance specifically. But that's not going to happen, because they could have done that last week. So Trey Lance would have to have like a great preseason, in which case the Niners would probably just want to keep him. So this is, probably pretty far-fetched, but I wanted to put a video on YouTube with Trey Lance, Aaron Rodgers in the same title. Figured I might get some hits. So we just talked about it for about 3 minutes, I think. We'll see what happens. Sorry, guys. I'm shameless like that. Okay, let's talk Dee Ford. The Niners are holding out hope, or they have no choice but to hold out hope because of his contract, one or the two. Anyway, there's been reports that he's making strides, and they're hopeful. What should they not do when he – like, if you were a coach, what would you do to give Dee Ford the best chance to contribute in some way this year?
Yeah, I think you're just going to have to give him time. You know, if there's any chance that he's going to play, you've got to be really patient with him. And you got a guy in Samson Ebukam who you brought in kind of to fill his role. So if Ebukam is able to play, that's your guy. And then if you need to spell him every once in a while, you give Ford, 5-10 snaps a game just to come off the bench and go at it. And that's something you do maybe towards the second half of the year, at the end of the year. It's kind of like back in, I think it was like 88 or 98 or something like that, when the 49ers brought in Charles Haley out of retirement, right?
Yeah.
And they brought him in specifically just to rush the passer. The guy hadn't played all year, and they brought him in, and he played like 10 or 15 snaps against the Packers, and then the next week against the Falcons. So I think that's kind of what you'd be possibly hoping to get out of a guy like Dee Ford, especially since with everything that he's got going on with his back and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like a procedural. Like, what would you do during the week? The way I look at it is, like, especially if you were a high school coach or a college coach, you want to set a culture. You want everyone to practice and to practice hard, especially if you're paying them $17 million. You don't pay college kids over the table. And high school kids, you certainly don't pay them either. But it seems like with Dee Ford, he should never practice again. Like, this guy should never practice again. He should be limited in contact. Just, hey, man, if you can go on the field and run around, that's great. But we don't need to see anything from you in practice. We don't want any contact, because the littlest contact. I mean, I saw it like he was in practice. He looked good. Something happened. Never saw him again. And it was his back or something. I mean, I don't think he can ever practice. And I think that's kind of what Kansas City was doing with him at the end. They were like, look, anything you can give us on game day is gravy. We don't expect you to practice, and that's why we're not going to resign you.
Yeah, and guys in his position don't need to have that much practice, as long as they're working on their technique with on a side field or whatever without contact. they can step into a game. They, especially a guy like Ford who's been in the league long enough. He's a veteran. He knows what to expect once he gets on the field. He just needs to be healthy and able to give him full effort for 10 to 15 snaps a game.
That's right. So 49ers, keep him on a side field. Don't let anyone touch him. Get him as close to 100% healthy as he can possibly be, and then put him in a game. And if he gets hurt, it needs to happen in a game. You've paid this man $30 million. Put him in. He got hurt last year in practice. He's gotten hurt. Yeah, stop letting him practice. Ridiculous. I don't know what culture you're trying to set, because you've said it already. You guys have a strong locker room. Dee Ford is the hired gun that hasn't been able to shoot, so let him shoot.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Next topic. Why the Niners didn't draft a wide receiver? I thought it was a really interesting choice. You could say that they had other needs. They do need someone to fill that number 3 receiver role, and it seems like they're probably hoping one of these guys on the roster steps up. If you had to guess, which wide receiver do you think Kyle Shanahan would hope is the number 3 receiver next year?
The number 3 receiver, I think the guy that is Richie James. I think he's the guy that's the number 3 guy on their board right now, or on their depth chart.
I agree.
Everybody else, everybody else is kind of just, they're all veterans, and you're kind of hoping and seeing if they can get you something. As far as to your question, why the 49ers didn't draft a receiver, I think they had other needs that they went after, and that this draft class was just was really heavy on wide receivers, and so they knew that they were going to get a couple. There's going to be some options after the draft as undrafted free agents, and they got a guy that fits perfect with who they lost. And then even the guy that we mocked, I think, into the 3rd round was there and signed as an undrafted free agent with Philadelphia. So there were guys that were there. There were receivers throughout this. There was just a ton of them this year.
Okay, I agree with everything you said. I also have a theory, though. I feel that while Richie James Jr. will be the number 3 receiver when camp opens, he'll get that spot. I'm guessing that Kyle is hoping that Jalen Hurd can stay healthy and win that job, because they did draft him in round 3. Early in round 3, Kyle Shanahan pretty much is the chief wide receiver scout. I'm sure he really liked his tape and thought he, had plans for him, and isn't ready to give up on him. Of course, you can't count on Jalen Hurd, but I'm thinking if Kyle is like staying up, he wakes up in the middle of the night, 3:00 in the morning, can't go back to sleep. I'm thinking, man, if only Jalen Hurd could stay healthy, what a number 3 receiver he would be. He could really replace Kendrick Bourne, Jordan Reed in the red zone. Imagine what he could do in the red zone, particularly. Again, I just wanted to have Jalen Hurd in the title because Niner fans like him in about a 3 or 4 minute video, so we could talk about him and get some. That's all I'm saying. So Jalen Hurd, got to have a Jalen Hurd video every couple of months. Niner fans love him. I think Kyle Shanahan loves him too, and I think that part of the reason they didn't draft the wide receivers, they got this dude who they spent like the 60-something pick on, and they're not quite ready to run him out the door.
Yeah, and he's a big dude that is kind of like a cross between a tight end and a wide receiver that would fit perfectly with what they've been trying to do for the last 2 years. So if he can come in and he can be healthy and they can actually get something out of him, I agree with you. Everything they've built right now is towards power and strength and playing big, and this is a guy who would fit in perfectly with that.
Absolutely. All right. Did Richard Sherman. All right, let's talk Nick Bosa. A lot of people are starting to look at the Niners as a contender, as one of the better teams in the league. I think they are too. A lot depends on the quarterback, but a lot depends on Nick Bosa. He was one of their team MVPs 2 years ago. He missed most of the year last year. What do you think are reasonable expectations for Nick Bosa in 2021?
I think the reasonable expectations would be that he's going to be on a pitch count early on. They're going to bring him back slowly. They're going to take their time with him. I think he had 9 sacks his rookie year, somewhere in that ballpark. So I would expect him to probably be around 5 or 6 maybe this year, just because he's coming back. And I would expect him to like I said, pitch count, kind of like what Ohio State did with him when he was coming off of being injured. And they've built up a lot of depth around it, and I think that's part of why you've seen so much going on with the defensive line, is because they realize that they can't just send him out there and let him play 99% of the snaps.
That was the point I was going to make. Look at the depth they've assembled. They've got a really deep defensive line. They got Samson Ebukam and Dee Ford and Jordan Willis. A bunch of guys on the at the end. So yeah, it seems like they're prepared for it. Arden Key, thank you very much. So yeah, it seems like they got a bunch of guys. And then also, so how would the pitch count work? I wouldn't be surprised if he played every other drive. That's what he did at Ohio State. Every other drive. So one, he starts, and then the next drive, it's Samson Ebukam. It's Jordan Willis, something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the way they do it, just to be safe, because you don't want to run him into the ground before he turns 24. He's supposed to be a cornerstone player for the Niners.
Yeah, if it all depends on Arden Key, I think, is going to be one of the guys that'll be rotating over there, and the other one is, I'm blanking on his name, number 98, that they finally brought back. That's been hurt for a couple of years.
Ronald Blair.
Ronald Blair. Yeah, so Ronald Blair and Arden Key, I think, are the guys that they brought back specifically to help Bosa out with his pitch count, because that's the position that Blair always played. Blair was the guy that came on when they took him out of the game in 2019.
I think he's a free agent. I don't think he's on the team right now. Ronald Blair.
They re-signed him.
Can they re-sign him? I cover the 49ers, and I don't know who's on the team. Well, if they have Ronald Blair too, that's great. I like Ronald Blair, good guy. Hoping he is on the team. Ronald, I didn't mean to cut you if you are on the team. Okay, same topic. Reasonable expectations for Eric Armstead. This guy's kind of a volatile player. He has potential to take over and put up great numbers, and he has potential to put up 2 sacks in a season. What do you expect for Eric Armstead?
When it comes to Eric Armstead, if you want to have reasonable expectations, I think you really have to have really low expectations, because for the most part of his career, he's been a guy that's only like a 3.5. His career high, I think, is 3.5 outside of one season. So you don't really. For me, I'm not going into this season expecting him to come and jump off the page at you. But at the same time, you see that they brought in Ebukam, and that was part of the reason why I think they brought him in, is they wanted to have that Dee Ford role guy where they can kick Armstead in and let him play inside on pass rushing downs, and that's where he's going to get a sack. So reasonable expectations, I'd say if he can get 4 or 5 sacks, then I think you got to be happy with that type of
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with your stat line. I'm going to go at it another way. I felt Armstead was a net negative last season. And I don't mean to be harsh. I know he was playing out of position, and that was very admirable to do that. But he didn't do it well. As a defensive end, when he rushed from the edge, he generated no pressure, and he couldn't keep the quarterback in the pocket. I thought he was like a net negative rushing from the edge. So he shouldn't have to do that this year. As an interior rusher, he's not a net negative. He is a good interior rusher. Not a great one, but a good one. So if he gets to play D-end as a run defender and then actually move inside and rush from the inside, he should be a net positive. I think that's a reasonable expectation for Eric Armstead to be a net positive on the defense for $17 million. That's all I ask. I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I think you're right on there. And to say that all you're open for is a net positive of a guy making $17 million, boy, that was a bad signing.
Yeah, it was a bad signing. But dude, don't make it worse, man. I appreciate you playing on the edge, but don't just wildly try to get the sack, give it up. I mean, not get it, and then let the guy get out of the pocket. You know you're not going to get that sack. What are you thinking? I couldn't. Ooh, that guy. I don't even root for the 49ers, and every time he did that, I was like, Eric, come on. You're killing me. All right, last topic. I think this one's – every few weeks we got to bring this up because there's no news about this, and I should have asked at that press conference. I remember to ask about McGlinchey. This is way more important than Mike McGlinchey. Fred Warner, what's up with that? He needs an extension. He's in the exact same spot that George Kittle was in last year. George Kittle's thing dragged out until pretty much the week before his first practice. And that was late July. This year, there's OTAs. My question to you is, should Fred Warner go to those OTAs, voluntary, and play without a new deal? If you were his agent, what would you suggest? There's no penalty for not going.
Yeah, if I was his agent, I'm telling him not to go. There's no benefit for him to go right now. Everything is just a negative, because the last thing that you want to have happen is like what happened in Denver, where the guy goes out and gets hurt and before at this point in the season, just
who was that?
Sit out.
Who are you talking?
Oh no, the guy that just got injured. He was working out on his own.
It just happened recently.
Yeah, one of their tackles got hurt working out on his own, and now he's going to lose $10 million because he was working out away from the facility. Yep. But even you can still use that here in this case, because this is a guy who's due to make a big payday, and if he goes out and anything happens in OTAs, that's out the window.
Absolutely. So he should not go. He might go because I don't know, that's his personality or something, but he shouldn't. And I think the 49ers should want him there. So I think this should wrap up soon. I don't know if it will, but it should.
I don't think the 49ers have the money right now to make the deal. If you look at their salary cap situation, they're when you look at their top 51 number, they still have about $18 million even after the rookie signing. But when you take into account what their salary cap situation is at their 53-man roster, they're right up against it. So I don't think they have the money really to make a move on him right now. That goes back to the Jimmy Garoppolo situation.
That's what I'm saying. Let's circle back to the original question. Who's the odd man out? Maybe it's Jimmy.
Yeah, I think there's, I wrote an article earlier this week about this. I think there's a lot of smoke going on right now about this, and there was no reason for Jimmy Garoppolo to go on a media tour after the draft to talk about what a good guy he's going to be, and there was no reason for Jed York to have to come out and talk about how they want to go ahead and keep him, and they'd be willing to keep him for 2 more years, unless you're trying to build up value for a guy that you weren't able to get value for already because your head coach came out and basically said we don't want him.
Yeah, so maybe this is how it could work. OTAs come out and Trey Lance shows what he's made of. Not what he's made of, or shows his readiness. Let's say he looks great. Let's say he's ready to do this. Like, he's got enough of the playbook memorized. He doesn't fumble the snaps. He can get the words out. He can execute well enough, and it looks good. Maybe they get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo before training camp. Hey, we've seen enough. We've got Nate Sudfeld, Josh Rosen. That's 3 right there. Thank you. And we got Josh Rosen. That's 4. We got four quarterbacks for camp. Trey Lance has shown enough. Thank you very much, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, I could see that happen, and where it's something that maybe it's a trade that happens right before training camp starts. There's teams out there that want him. From what I'm hearing, there's New England still really likes this guy. They still have a special spot for him. Houston, they have Tyrod Taylor, who hasn't really done very well when he's been a starter. And they got a guy Davis Mills, who's played far less games than even any of these guys than Trey Lance, when he was at Stanford. So there's a couple of spots there. And then who knows what's going to happen in Green Bay? If Green Bay could pick him up on a cheap deal as far as a trade, and they have to do something with Aaron Rodgers, at least you're getting a quarterback that knows your offense and can step in late and guide you.
And it's interesting, as you say, the Niners really don't have the cap space to extend Fred Warner right now. Okay, let's play this out logically. The Niners don't have the cap space to extend Fred Warner right now. 2, the Niners have to extend Fred Warner this offseason. 3, the Niners have to create cap space to extend Fred Warner this offseason. 4, how are the Niners going to create that cap space? 5, trade Jimmy Garoppolo.
There's a couple of things. There's trading Garoppolo. They're going to get some cap space. They're also going to get some cap space when they finally decide that they're going to cut Weston Richburg.
Right,
because he's still on the roster. So there's still some maneuvering that can go on, but they just don't have it right now. So definitely Garoppolo's got to be a name though that you pay attention to that. And then you've got there's Richburg, and I think there might be one other guy that's they're holding on to, but the expectation is he's not going to be around.
One of those quarterbacks is getting the boot. I do not think 5 are going to make it to training camp. It's going to be like The Bachelor. Someone's not getting a rose. I'm sorry, I don't know who it is.
Yeah, somebody is going to lose their flower before the.
That's right. Shane says, isn't Warner signed through the season? Why the rush on a contract? That's a fair question. It's the same situation the Niners were in last year with Kittle. You don't want to put a young star leader, captain, pillar of the franchise into a lame duck season where he could get hurt and not get money, right? That's what it is.
That's what it is. He does have a contract through this year. But from his standpoint, that's why this is where he has leverage, is he has the leverage to not show up. And as long as he's willing to not get paid and if he's willing to hold out, then that's what he should do.
Right. And I don't think he'll get fined for not going to a voluntary OTA in May. It's just protecting yourself. I don't need to go there. There's no penalty. But the Niners shouldn't want this relationship to deteriorate. They should want him happy. They should want him there the same way they wanted George Kittle happy in there. I mean, they negotiated, but they didn't ever get to a point where George Kittle held out.
Yeah, and I don't think we'll see that either. I think we'll see something done early in right before training camp or right after it starts. I think that's when we'll see a deal for him get done. And as one of the guys over here in the comment section, where Weston Richburg is a guy that they can get some money from. Dee Ford, even possibly, if that's the direction they go. I don't know what his contract looks like now, but I know they can save some money by getting rid of him too at the end of the offseason.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. Something should happen this week. Either he gets an extension, or he doesn't go to OTAs, or he does. And one way or another, it'll be interesting to see what happens. There should be a development with Fred Warner this week. I'm excited for that because there hasn't been a development since the Niners drafted dudes, and I like developments because my hits do better that way. So we'll see how that goes.
Yes, we need topics. Let's go. Come on, Niners.
News. That's how journalism works. It works with news.
Yeah.
Niners, give us some. Jack, thank you very much for doing this at the last minute. Everyone, thank you for watching. I'm going to be back in an hour and 20 with Coach Johnson looking at Ambry Thomas. Jack and I'll be back on Tuesday looking at Aaron Banks. See you guys.